Namaskar. My name is Saurabh Nanda, and I represent this amazing forum called Approaching the New Normal. This is a forum created by a bunch of educators who want the education system, especially in India, to change, evolve into something better. We come from different backgrounds, from school setups, college setups, counseling backgrounds, test prep companies, edtech startups, policy making, NGO, social work, and just technology enthusiasts, so that we can discuss things which might be able to help make our education system more efficient. This particular podcast is the first discussion that we did, and it begins with the introduction of the individual panelists. Thank you so much. Please enjoy.
And I started work. Then I started traveling. So I've been to a lot of alternative education schools and tried to see the different models of education is pursued in different parts of the country. So I traveled most of the alternative schools in north, west, and south. Northeast, east side is something which I've not explored as such. But apart from that, I've traveled a lot. And currently, I just finished with my MPhil, Master's Philosophy in Education Policy, and it's an integrated course. So I from next month, like from 30th of January, I begin with my PhD. I think that's about it. Anybody can take up. कुछ ज़्यादा फॉर्मल हो रहा है मतलब all of you are waiting for each other.
No, I'll go next. So my name is Jasleen. I graduated in 2016. I did mathematics honors from Khalsa College North Campus. And post that, I worked for almost 1.5 to 2 years in corporate sector. I started my first job working in Postus Technologies. It's a SaaS-based company, and they work in hospitality sector. And then I worked as HR analyst with Laurent Finance in Gurgaon. And post my brief stint in corporate, I moved to development space and I joined Peak for India. And where I worked in the low-income community in North Delhi, Jahangirpuri, where we were working in government school. And working in that community, we started a couple of projects. We started a community center, a skill-based project, a summer camp for children in those communities. While working in Teach for India, I got a chance to work with Global Giving also. It's a US-based organization, and they have office here, where I got a chance to travel and visit not-profit organizations in South and West India. And I visited almost 15 organizations, mostly in education space, and got to know different ways in which people are intervening in communities, working, taking up education projects, and doing incredible work there. And yeah, I just finished my fellowship last month, and I'll be joining Quality Council of India like in July or August. Like the dates are to be finalized. So yeah, that's all about myself. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I'm Praneeth. Basically I'm an engineer. So I did electrical engineering in Bangalore, and I studied in Dubai for 10 years, and then I studied in India. I studied in Bangalore. Then I immediately proceeded to do my fellowship at Teach for India in Ahmedabad, and I graduated this year, and I'm working currently at a startup called Open House. We do after school classes for kids, and I'm working in the product team. So something that I'm focusing on is basically trying to build games which have an academic viewpoint to it, so that maybe repurposing another game that already exists or making a new game, things like that. And my interests are policy and also curriculum design, and I'm also interested in exploring virtual reality and AR for education, and yeah, that's basically it. And games, of course. Thanks.
So I am Pallavi. I have been working since the last 7.5 years. So I have a lot of variations in my CV. I am basically a human rights activist. I have been working under a lot of spectrums. I was associated with anti-human trafficking full time. like which I'm doing right now. But then I worked with a lot of other fields in terms of education, social development. Then there is migration and conflicts. So it's a mix of a lot of things. Right now, I am in Bangalore. I am working with an organization which is trying to combine liberal arts with science, management, technology. So they are trying to, it is somewhat similar to what Ashoka and Kriya has been doing, Ashoka University and Kriya University. So I have been associated with them since the last 8 months. I have been visiting a lot of IB schools, Cambridge schools. So I have visited almost the whole country as a whole. I am basically from Assam, Northeast. I've studied in Lady Shriram, and then I shifted to Chennai to do my master's in gender studies. After which I have been writing a lot on education and how to change the system of education. I have been working with a lot of moms, those who are homeschooling students. Like, well, there's a lot of people in my circle who have been homeschooling kids, and I have realized that during this pandemic, I think homeschool is the best thing for a lot of them. And then when I saw Priyank and this initiative, we're like, okay, fine, let's see how we can explore it. And that's how I'm here.
Hi everyone, I'm Saurabh Nanda, and yes, I'm an engineer too. Thank you. And so Priyank and I, we are actually from the same college, but we hadn't really met before. I saw his post on Network Capital and computer science engineering. Then worked for an American company for 2.5 years. I realized that it's not really my thing. It's not making me happy. So decided to do something about it. Joined a startup in Gurgaon, which was into psychometric assessments for high school students all over India. Traveled a lot in India, visiting schools and so on. 2013, after 9 months working there, I became an education freelancer because I thought that if I stick to one company, I will not be able to understand the entire system because, well, engineers are fascinated by systems and I wanted to understand the education system. So since then, I've worked with psychometrics, psychology, teaching, then taking a lot of seminars and currently webinars. 2 years ago, I started working on cyberbullying as well. Then I've lived in India. 2016, I spent around 10 months in Denmark. I was working with a university over there for cross-cultural understanding of curriculum from the Indian subcontinent to the Western European way of doing things. And last year I was in Japan. I was part of a fellowship. It's called the Awaji Youth Federation, where I was fascinated with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 4 is about education. So I made a small project over there. Currently, after the lockdown, well, for 20 days, I had nothing to do. So I started my YouTube channel where I actually interact with a lot of people. All in my network, talking about various topics, and that's why it's so interesting to be here because you guys have just talked about so many topics I'm very, very interested in. I have my own company as well, which is a career consulting company. That's what pays the bills. But apart from that, I try and find new ways of doing things for students and teachers, everyone involved in the education sector. So that's more or less me.
So I think we will begin with talking about the whole COVID-19 and how it is impacting education. You all can pitch in with your experiences, in your experience with students and your work and how you have seen it is impacting. The more contextual it is, the more wonderful it will be. The more you are able to tell that in some part of, let's say, Delhi, if you're working, let's say an urban slum in Delhi, or let's say in other parts where you have seen if you have worked, how it is impacting different students, that will be more interesting. So I'll just begin by saying that anybody could start and tell their experience about what impact the COVID-19 has had on education system.
So I will start. I was doing the outreach of my university. So we had started last August, which is itself a very late phase to start for the outreach for the next year, because just before the students plan to go for 12th, they know which are the colleges they want to go. This is how the students have been thinking. So we have visited all the places, starting from East India to northeastern part of the country to Bombay. Now Maharashtra has a very different objective. The IB schools and CIE schools of Maharashtra just want to send their kids abroad. Like, this is the outlook of the Maharashtra students. When it comes to Bangalore, I visited all the IB schools of Bangalore, CIE schools, in fact, the CBSE schools also, which is like DPS North. These are the good CBSE schools in Bangalore. So what I observed is that they had a conversation with us. They kept our college as one of the colleges, as it was one of the options. They have also decided to keep the international colleges as options. And just when they got to know that there is some crisis like this pandemic coming, so they decided, like most of the counselors, because nowadays, like in my time, I'm not that old, but in my time, we did not have counselors. Right now, all the schools have counselors. So the counselors were telling me the parents don't want the kids to go abroad, and they think that going abroad is not an option at all, especially because of the pandemic. Second is that online classes are happening. The colleges are charging you the same amount, but in the online classes, they will be taking it online, which also means that you need to be in a good network. You need to also figure it out, whatever the lessons the teachers are giving, whether you are able to cope up with it. And so at least 40% of the parents with whom I had a conversation, they have just decided to do a coaching for this year, like either IELTS coaching or TOEFL coaching, something like where they feel that their money is not wasted, and also the kids don't feel that they are behind. So they have started this concept of homeschooling also, but I'm not sure how good the homeschooling of higher education is. Also, the pandemic has affected the higher education the most, because I don't know if you have heard about that particular consultancy. I forgot that name. I don't know. They have laid off like around 25 of their employees. I will just Google the name and give it to you. So the employees were getting 64 lakhs per annum. They are also been laid off. So this is the situation. So this is what is my like understanding apart from what has happened last year and how the pandemic has affected higher education.
Okay, can I ask something like, why do you think parents are not wanting the children to go abroad? Is it only because of the threat which COVID-19 is posing, that if children go, who will take care of them and what will happen to them? Is there things like that, or they don't want children to, because there is an option of online learning also, right? So are the children not even taking up the online classes, or it's like they just don't want them because of the COVID-19?
No, I don't think it's not just, it's because of the COVID only, because one of my senior, very, very senior, like she had a daughter, that person was studying somewhere in Europe. So the government had said that no, they will not be treating if any crisis happens. So they kind of lifted that girl, airlift, something happened, and then she came back to the country in January. A lot of countries are saying that we will not be able to take care of your kids for anything like leave about COVID. That's a serious extent. Like normal healthcare is also a big question. And then my own, my father's friend's son has gone to UCA. Yeah, I think UCA, the private university. Yeah. So uncle paid around 70 to 80 lakhs. That boy has gone in January. From February, it's an online class. He is in severe depression, and so the parents are regretting, because everyone had told them not to send the boy, but he went because he got through. So now, so I don't think it is just because of COVID, because there are a lot of underlying things that we have to research about and find out what is the reason.
I would like to actually add to that. So I completely agree with what Pallavi said, and I've had similar experiences while interacting with parents and students here, both who have sent their children abroad, and also those who are planning to send their children abroad. There are a bunch of things which are happening. So definitely there is this entire healthcare crisis, because of which people don't want to go abroad. The other thing is there is a very, very deep economic crisis as well. So I would like to give examples here, like from Punjab. Punjab is famous for sending people abroad, and those people, they all went to go to community colleges and not very great universities. All there, even though they have visas, they book their tickets, but they're just not able to go abroad. So that's a big economic problem for them. At the same time, a lot of students who will go abroad later, because of the job loss in the US, like 42%, I think that is the scenario, that 42% of all the jobs lost in the US will not come back. So those people who have lost their jobs, they will all go for odd jobs, which the students used to take, right? So those 20 hours which you get in a student visa, the students are going, like, they will find it tough to actually earn money. So that is from that economic strata. Then from the other perspective, one of my clients, he's currently in Boston. He applied for a college in Canada. He got through, but then neither the US or Canada, and he's actually a Ukrainian citizen. So it's a very big problem for him. Actually, he doesn't really belong anywhere because his US visa will end soon. Canada hasn't really processed the visa yet, and there are no flights. So it's not only the healthcare, but it's also economic crisis. It's also a security crisis for the individual.
I'll just go ahead and give like a little bit of an optimistic view, I suppose, to this. I think at the beginning of my fellowship, an observation that I made was around out of like say 30 parents, 30 families that were in my class, I think only 10 of them had access to smartphones and the internet as a whole. But then towards the end of the 2 years, it just sort of like Moore's law, everything went out of the, like it just doubled, and it ended up being 25 to 30. So something that is also urging with respect to education would also be that there is going to be this sort of transition to the online learning as a whole, whether it's just going to be why VR sounds like a good idea. Okay, Priyanka's dropped. Okay, why VR sounds like a good idea is because it sort of also tries to simulate what a classroom would look like. Of course, you won't have this cultural aspect of, hey, let me like raise my hand and stuff, but things like that will develop over time. So I think the future in the long term is looking good, and COVID could also be a catalyst to that change, where parents find the need. Suppose online learning from schools become like a mandate, this could be a catalyst for parents to sort of think about investing money into a smartphone. So this could sort of in a way future proof them. Again, it may be a completely obscure observation, however this could be an implication saying that, hey, this could work this way. And I don't know, it seems like the future would, like, also in the past 3 years, you've seen like organizations like Lido Learning, Byju's, Vedantu just taking off. And that's for a reason, because a lot of investors also believe that, hey, online learning could be a thing of the future. And schools may be obsolete. However, I'd like to say that a teacher's job is more than just teaching, but I feel like all of these online counseling sessions, games, activities, videos, everything's available online. So I think we're headed one step in the future. Maybe COVID is that. Maybe it's like a a hidden gem for us, I suppose. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. Looks good so far. Of course, like on an international standpoint, it's very trash, the situation, I suppose. Saying it very acutely. However, yeah, that's just my point. This is an observation that I made from parents and their. I even visited a village in Kutch, and there was just at like 11 p.m. in the night, just like a 45-year-old lady was just putting her phone up like this and video calling in the most remotest place ever. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this has really reached places where the youth are really present, and that could also push education to that extent. So maybe this is something that we could look at also. Optimistic, of course, but realism, I don't know. Idealistic, sure. Yeah, this is my take.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I've been dealing with kids in low-income community Jahangirpuri, and similar to Praneeth's like I started with kids, the kids on smart, definitely early pandemic, like the current crisis. I think a lot has changed in terms of education and priorities. Hello, am I audible?
Now it's fine.
Yeah. So, when this COVID crisis happening, and we were all that we need to move digital, we need to have Zoom classes, we need to share digital content without even realizing what the kid is going through. There are so many parameters, like these kids are living in a cramped house, 7, 8 people clubbed in one room, just one smartphone and 3, 4 siblings. Parents, working, the parents lost their jobs, don't even have money. How will they pay their internet rent? How will they get the recharges done? So many constraints happen. So like it's very, very important to make sure that the kids are meeting the basic level. Do they have food to eat? Do they have place to live? Do they have medicines? So I think the priorities initially shifted from learning to just providing them with the basic necessities. अगर बच्चा खाना ही नहीं खा रहा होगा, उसको अच्छे से काम ही नहीं मिल रहा होगा, पूरा दिन लाइनों में लग लग के वो खाना ले रहा है, how can we expect the student to learn? So I think initially the priority shifted from making sure that the kids were meeting the basic needs, their homes were filled, and then we started figuring out how to make sure that the learning is happening. Zoom classes is not possible for the kids because they don't have smartphone available all the time. Some kids have at 8, some kids have at 12, some kids have at 2. So making sure that all kids are coming under roof at the same time became a really, really challenging task for us to figure out. So another solution that we thought was sending learning packets to the kids so that they can access whenever they have time. For example, we made learning packets for English, for maths, started sharing online resources so that they can access, whenever they have the smartphone. And it was done in a more structured manner. They were given instructions, they were given reflection questions, they were given homework so that the kid knows how to process the information that we're sending and not just sharing the information. Another thing we tried was to get some volunteers on the board and started providing kids with the mentors. For example, if they're facing problem in maths or science or any other subject, for example, SST, they know that they have mentors to reach out. So that's how we started progressing. Currently also, we're not able to push through a lot of things. That's the only alternative that we've come up, currently to engage with the kids. We're working on the social emotional learning, sharing resources for that, talking to kids, talking to the parents, instructing mothers what activities that they can do. So these are the few alternative learning which are self-paced, easy. So the kids are also engaged, and it is not a constraint for the kids to access everything digitally. Yeah, so that's what my experience has been.
Okay. So in the lockdown, I've actually become more busier than usual. So far, I think I've done around 30 career webinars, addressed more than 3,000 students and parents. And the common themes that came out from that, those were, I would just like to share those common themes. First was, which I like to call as a joke, death by webinar. So students are just tired and parents are just not interested, and you can hear all that when by mistake they switch on the mic from their side and you can hear what's going on in the background. So that's one part. That means, okay, all right. So that basically tells us that the webinars that we are doing, the classes or the career webinars or cyberbullying webinars that I do, they're just not engaging enough. So we need to definitely, come up with more engaging stuff which happens online. The second thing which has come about to be is cyberbullying. Now, cyberbullying has definitely, transcended from only students to teachers also, because, well, teachers are online as well most of the time with them. So there are memes being created about teachers and not only students. And in a week, I usually consult 3 to 4 schools, just telling them what to do when they have a case like this and what can be done. So that's the second theme which has come up. So definitely there is one part of India which Jasleen talked about, which doesn't really have access to, very basic needs. And then we're expecting them to have internet and all the devices. whereas there's this other part of India which has everything, and now they're having problems which are related more to the, let's say, developed world or first world problems. We are having them simultaneously. So the cyberbullying is the second theme, and I think all of us are aware of the Instagram boys locker case. The third theme, from a business test prep edtech business point of view, which I had recent discussions with a few of my business partners, was that schools are not willing to invest in good quality IT infrastructure even though they need it. So what has come across is, so there are companies, there is one company in Mumbai with whom I'm in talks with, and they have developed this integrated digital environment which the school can use to organize classes, organize students, attendances, everything. So it's in one software, very nice, very lean, but the schools are just not interested because they still think that it's only a 6-month thing. Corona will go after 6 months and then we'll be back to normal. So that attitude is definitely there. Even in schools which have resources, where students come from families which have resources, and they're just waiting it out. So it's a waiting game. The fourth part is that education technology, as Praneeth rightly said, I mean, we are definitely moving towards that edge. And I share Praneeth's optimism about using AR and VR, because that is the only way you can create a classroom in your bedroom. Otherwise, it's not possible. But the thing is, most of the edtech companies in India, they are just creating content and publishing it. Like in a week, I usually get 1 to 2 requests from publishers. So there's this very famous author, at least in North India, his name is R.S. Agarwal, very, very famous maths books. I think all of us have studied from him. So his publishing house contacted me a few days ago, and they are doing the same thing. They are making videos for SSC and government exams and bank PO, because obviously private jobs are drying up. So everyone's focus is back on government jobs, and they just want to create content and publish it. And then they define, or they call themselves as, an edtech company. It is not edtech. It is you're just using tools already available. You're not doing anything special about it. So edtech in India, 90 to 95% is just limited to creating content and publishing it online. So those are the 4 themes that I really understood. And yeah, that's my viewpoint from the pandemic.
Okay, I have 2 things to ask, or let's say think about. One, I
Priyank,
think
you haven't shared your viewpoint.
Okay. Okay, I'll just ask, then I'll come to my viewpoint, because I'll forget then. Okay, one, I think what Praneeth told was about schools being obsolete. Now, that is something which is very interesting in a way. See, when we think of it, if you think of the Western societies, there are already a huge chunk of people who are going for homeschool. So when we say schools are doing a lot more than just learning, just education, but anyway, there's homeschooling happening. So we cannot really, totally negate this aspect. So how do we look at this whole schools being obsolete in Indian context? Is it something which is in a way really possible? Not just because of technology. Technology is one aspect of it. If we are able to give technology to every child, is it still viable? Because again, when we don't have technology, there's no point. That is not what I'm trying to contest here. I'm just trying to think that even if you are able to provide technology, which is the basis for any kind of thought which says schools can be obsolete, is it really possible? Is it really viable? Second, we talk a lot about this inequities among students. That students come from different backgrounds. Students come from, let's say, humble backgrounds and all that. What about inequities in teachers? So if we have, I've seen teachers who are really looked up to, wonderful teachers in classroom. They have become inefficient because of the whole shift, which is asking them to use technology. So they're not tech savvy. So in your real life experience, have you seen teachers who are not able to cope with this whole technology thing? Because we are not prepared. Our teachers are not as such prepared for the. Because aaj bhi, if you see what does having computer technology in a school means, it just means you have some computer science in school. They may be packed in boxes. They may not have been yet been opened by the school authority, but they should be there. That's it. Even if inspection goes on, they will show that there is a computer room with some computer installed. They need not even work. So that is the idea still we have when it comes to computers being used as technology.
So I have something to say. My friend, she is an assistant professor of biology in the City University, New York. So she was telling me the moment they got to know, like, because in US, I think till December, till the fall, or maybe till next year, they are planning to do everything online. So she was telling me that she is having a big challenge, like doing everything online. And it seems that their particular university has told all the people, those who are old school, those who are not well acquainted with Zoom and all this WebEx and everything, they should start learning. Otherwise, they will be told to leave. Like, despite the fact that they have been working for 15, 20 years, they will be told to go, like, because they are not able to manage. So it's all about technology. So she was telling me that despite being a topper, despite getting scholarships, teaching in a university for so long, if the university tells the teachers that, okay, fine, because you are not well acquainted, you are not tech savvy, so chalo, tum jao. Same is happening with Assam. So my friend is teaching in Arunachal, Tawang. She is English professor there. She was telling me one kid went on top of a small hill to get the network. सो वो बच्चा गिरते गिरते मतलब मरते मरते गिरा, मतलब ऐसा सिचुएशन था. तो शी वाज टेलिंग मी कि नेटवर्क हम कैसे एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं, बच्चों को नेटवर्क मिलेगा, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट जस्ट अबाउट इंटरनेट. लाइक आई एम टेलिंग यू, आई एम ऑल्सो नॉट सो टेक सेवी, मुझे भी बहुत कुछ नहीं. आई थिंक जब से पैंडेमिक हुआ है, जब से वर्क फ्रॉम होम हुआ है, इतने वेबिनार्स मैंने दिए हैं, इतने अटेंड किए हैं, और हम 16 17 घंटे काम कर रहे हैं. लाइक ऑल ऑफ अस, आई थिंक ऑल ऑफ अस एग्रीज टू इट. एंड देन अगर वाईफाई नहीं है, कितने लोगों के घर में वाईफाई है? जस्ट बिकॉज मे बी हम लोग, आई डोंट थिंक हर किसी के घर में वाईफाई है. 10th 11th तक तो हम लोग के घर में वाईफाई नहीं होता था. लाइक आई एम फ्रॉम नॉर्थ ईस्ट, हमारे घर में कभी वाईफाई नहीं हुआ. फोन भी है तो फोन पे नेट इसलिए है क्योंकि फेसबुक चला सके, व्हाट्सएप चला सके पेरेंट्स या जो भी हो. और जिस तरह का क्लासेस होता है उसमें तो बहुत अच्छा नेट चाहिए. तो हम कैसे एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं कि वी विल रीच? आई थिंक देयर हैज टू बी सम अदर सॉल्यूशन अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस टेक्नोलॉजी. Teachers, students, both are suffering equally. That's what I feel.
And yeah, like Pallavi, you mentioned it very beautifully कि internet ही नहीं है, basic ही नहीं है, तो कैसे करे? Another thing I was just wondering, is too much tech good for kids? Like even if we are attending as adults, on screen 7 hours, 6 hours, private school kids are spending like 7, 8 hours on the screen learning. Is it really good for the mental health? Are they really able to process कि just because हमें दिखाना है, फीस भरनी है तो पढ़ रहा है, बच्चा समझ पा रहा है, प्रोसेस कर पा रहा है, उनकी 8 to 3 ऑनलाइन क्लासेस हो रही है. Is it good for the kids to even spend so much time on the screen just because they need to finish up or cope up with the syllabus? It might just turn into a different tangent altogether. It can lead to stress, mental health issues, health issues and everything. Are we really taking those consideration also? And another thing also, government school teachers and teachers from low income communities, main issue ये भी आ जाता है, they are from humble background and everything. They do not have उनकी basic teaching की ही training इतनी अच्छे से नहीं होती. How can we expect them to deliver content online? They hardly know how to use smartphones. You cannot do these things right now. And like another thought I would just leave is, too much tech good for the kids, even in shorter or longer run.
Yeah, I completely agree with that actually. So first, I would like to address the first question that Priyank asked. Will the schools become obsolete? And I think Pallavi and Jasleen have already mentioned the reasons why probably schools in India will not become obsolete anytime soon, because the standardization of infrastructure is just not there in the country. In fact, I was involved in an industry survey on Sunday, which was being done by a second tier 2 B school, like top 40 B school in India. So they were asking the same question: is e-learning? How is e-learning in India and all that? I said e-learning doesn't exist in India. We have been forced into it, and we are coping up with it. It's not effective, but so that we can do something, we are doing it. That is the reason why most of the schools and parents, tuition teachers, test prep companies, they okay, let's leave the test prep companies. They're investing a lot of money in technology right now, but all these other people, they are not investing money in the right technology. At the same time, they don't want to also, because their audience doesn't have the right infrastructure. So after 6 months, once the pandemic is over, they are expecting everything to go back to normal. Once the social distancing is not needed anymore or something like that, they're expecting everything to go back to normal. This year is wasted. It is wasted. Then coming to the inequity among teachers, so I absolutely agree. There is definitely a lot of inequity among teachers. I was trying to help a teacher out by explaining to her how you can conduct classes online, but I already told her that you need this, and she's in her 50s. She said, no, I'm not doing that. She learned WhatsApp in a very difficult way. So for the past 2 years, she has been taking photos of, first of all, she writes the assignments, then she takes a photograph of the assignment, then she sends it on WhatsApp, then she writes the answers of the assignment, and then sends it again to the student once the student is ready to receive the answers. So that is the form of e-learning that we have in India. It is not really e-learning. So that's what my point of view is. I mean, in India, e-learning will take, it can definitely come about to be, because cheap internet is there, phones are getting cheaper. But if there is a lack of central vision, central policy, central guidelines, I don't think this will be achievable. One more important point that I recently discussed in April, I think. So I was talking to a friend of mine. She worked in an NGO called Katha in New Delhi, which is like one of the very oldest NGOs over there. And they've been working for 30 years, and they have a lot of good content. The founder makes amazing content. And they also created an app where, I think a couple of years ago, they were working with the PwC. PwC was their sponsor, and they created a mobile app where, they wanted to put all the content there, because Jio is cheap. So everyone had a smartphone, and they went out to these rural areas, slums in Delhi and everything. So fun fact, guys, in 2018, Harvard Kennedy School of Public Policy, they did a research in India where they found out that 71% of all men definitely use internet. Like half the country has internet right now, but out of those, only around 71% men have it, and only 38% women have it. So Katha basically is targeting women, but women don't have internet. Secondly, because they don't have internet, they will not be able to access it. Men have the internet, so men probably have the only smartphone or big phone in the household, and they mostly use the smartphone for entertainment purposes, for pornography. So their priority to use the smartphone, to let their child handle the smartphone and learn from it, I think it's kind of it's not immediately possible. Let's just say that.
Interesting. In fact, I was to add to that, and also thinking the same line. I read a very interesting article about the whole gender thing. When we are talking about, anyway, if we have a lot of examples where if a family is able to send one child to school, it will be the male child. Now, coming to a space where, even if you're talking about online learning, so if a family has one device, it will go to the male child. If a family doesn't have a lot of space, so there are a lot of families, there are 6-7 members in the family living in one arcade. So if you have to study, you need to have a space. So how do you build that space? And if you have 2-3 children, how do they build different space? That is something which is very challenging, in that perspective. So the whole gender angle I think is very important. Now coming to the whole idea of the COVID-19, what I think about is, see, the problem with me is that I am not, a big advocate of school anyway. Before COVID-19, I was, constantly thinking that schools are not doing the job which they ought to do. And I was constantly writing about it, discussing the same. Now, when we have COVID in place, and we are seeing that schools are much more. For example, schools are a safe place where kids are sent and parents can go about doing their job. That is one of the big things, because I see a lot of my friends who used to send their children to school and then they could do their stuff. It was easy for them. Now that children are at home, they're not able to live a simple life. No, it is suffocating. They have to leave their children to their granny's house or wherever possible so that they can work. Work from home is becoming more difficult than the whole office work from them because of the kids. So, and also if you see the midday meal scheme, a lot of children were coming to school because of the food, the basic thing. They were coming to school because there was a meal, at least one day they'll get it. They could save some, they could eat belly full, and that is why that was how the school was attractive to them. So there was school not only as a place of learning, there are other aspects, social aspects to it, which the school was catering to when it comes to the child. However, I also wrote a paper where I was discussing how detrimental the whole school experience is, for example, on creativity, culture, and the whole mindset of children. So it is somewhere destroying the way children ought to grow. It is somewhere telling them that, for example, students are made to forget their culture outside the school gate, come in a single attire, go out as if they are one. But outside the school gate, they wear different attires. Someone is from a different religion. How do we expect tolerance then? So I always used to argue that you are living every all diversity outside the gate, and then you are teaching diversity. Right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And also, there are a lot of studies which tell, there was an interesting study by NASA where it was, they tested creativity for children. So when they tested creativity of 5-year-olds, it was somewhere around 68%. Same kids, then when they were 12-year-olds, it dropped down to 30%. Same kids they tested again when they were 18-year-olds, and it dropped down to 5%. So how the creativity curve is getting lost. Now COVID-19 is not seen as a opportunity to look back on what schools were doing, to look back what harm school was doing and do something about it. It is seen as a pandemic where we have to do something to somehow recover, to somehow find a possible solution which could substitute the whole school experience. We are just wanting children to go through the curriculum, even if it is online classes or teaching or whatever. But the idea is just to make sure the children learn. And the idea is not to take this as an opportunity to work on things which were going wrong. So what my idea is to first of all figure out your schools what effectively they were not doing right. And when we are building another structure or infrastructure, whatever, in case we are not able to go back, which I think we should not, or even if we go back, in both the cases, we should be able to figure out that these are the things which we are doing wrong, and these are the ways in which we have to go ahead. But that is something which I don't currently see as such happening.
I think Priyank, you beautifully summed up the entire thing. Like, is it very important? Is it like necessary that we look everything through technology, or we really reflect back to, what do we have in place, like the system, the policies, the processes, and everything. So it's more important to utilize this time in reflecting what was wrong and how we can move ahead. And edtech, is it the right solution considering the diversity, different setups that we work in, different kind of children we deal with, teachers we deal with, different communities that we work in? Is it the only solution? And when we talk about edtech, do we have concrete data that it is creating an impact on children? Are kids really learning? Do we have an assessment in a place that is making sure that edtech is actually changing lives? Or are we just using it as an opportunity to invest money and make businesses grow? So entire impact assessment is really, really important in this setup as to where we are leading further.
Okay. I just want to also think, let's say in 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, if we are able to come out of this situation, do you think, like any of you think that we'll go back to the same routine, or will there be a change?
There will be a change. I think it will be like it was AD and BC. It will be post COVID, before COVID, after COVID. I feel that's what it will be. We have started valuing our families. We have started, which we have already, but we have become more inclined to staying at home. Everyone has started becoming a cook. Everyone, like I think almost everyone has cooked. And then in terms of going out, watching socialization, I think that will completely take a halt. Like I myself have seen people just stopped going outside. Like we have become so comfortable. I don't think a lot of us want that office jana and matlab ye 15 घंटा काम, it's bad for our health, but we have got accustomed to it ki chalo we are with this new phase. I think there will be a big change in terms and jobs. A lot of people are losing jobs. People those who are in companies, I have seen my friend who was with Hindustan Times for 8 years, she has been told to leave last week. So, and she has been a very good reporter, and it's been really too much of depressing for all of us. And then I have seen my senior friends, those who are working with companies like Cognizant and all, everybody has been told to go. There is a layoff of 500 people. I think we will become self-dependent. In terms of migrants, I have seen migrants have gone back to Bihar, UP. They've started digging well and all that, which obviously needs government ka funding and all. But I think this pandemic has made everybody very much self-dependent. Ki kuch bhi ho jaye, matlab, I know we all are in, a lot of us have gone into depression. Today also we have seen this actor who has passed away. So both sides hai. कुछ लोग तो बहुत कुछ कर रहे हैं. I've seen a lot of us. मेरे घर में लोग वो बना रहे हैं, कैसे वो करके हाथ की सामान बना रहे हैं बैम्बू से. They are sending it abroad to get sold. So I think it is mixed. It is mixed, but definitely the world will have a big change. I think I can call it a renaissance only in one word if you ask me. Like it will be like that. This pandemic has made us feel that.
So do you think the schools will function differently after the whole pandemic is over? Like what change do you think the schools will do, or will they go back to the same order of functioning?
Schools, I think they will do, because my mom was a professor in a very small school which has become a college. Like, so उस school में suddenly they have started deciding कि TVs खरीदना है. मतलब पैसे जितने भी आ रहे हैं TVs खरीदना है. टीचर्स को ट्रेनिंग करेंगे, TOT करेंगे टीचर्स के साथ. उनको बताएंगे कि कैसे कैसे फोन पे बताना है बच्चों को. सो सब लोग अभी टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं. लाइक ये कैसे करना है, वो कैसे करना है. सो वो जो एक होता था ना, टीचर आता था, बुक किताब खोलता था, फिर पढ़ाता था. आई थिंक दैट विल चेंज. दैट इज व्हाट आई हैव सीन इन असम, लाइक इंटीरियर पार्ट्स ऑफ असम. और बहुत सारे ऐसे स्कूल्स भी है व्हिच इज ट्राइंग टू काइंड ऑफ कंप्लीटली नॉट टेक फीस, स्कूल फीस. बहुत सारे स्कूल्स ने ना स्कूल फीस लेना बंद कर दिया है, लाइक असम में. सो वन ऑफ माय फ्रेंड हैज kind of wrote a PIL to the High Court of Guwahati, and they decided कि अब किसी भी गरीब बच्चे से फीस नहीं लेंगे, ऑनलाइन क्लासेस दे रहे हैं, गवर्नमेंट पैसा देगा. तो आई थिंक ये सब तो मैं असम के पर्सपेक्टिव से बोल सकती हूँ. I can't say about other places. I don't have much proof, but I think yeah, it will change. Things will change.
I have two minds about this. Basically, I think logistics for students to come to school, go to school, midday meal as a whole will be a little bit sketchy, I feel, because even parents will be like, hey, who knows what kind of water they've used in the food, and who knows if it has XYZ in it. That has also been a problem before, so a lot of parents have not sent their kids with tiffin boxes as opposed to the midday meal as a whole. But again, that's a different spectrum to look at as completely. But I feel like systemically, like suppose the board exams are going to happen next year. 6 months down the line, I don't see a lot of like a paradigm shift with respect to how they will start looking at things differently. At least not most of the schools. I don't know how to explain it. Basically, they're not going to shift the way they think about exams because that's up like deep rooted in our system and it's been there for a while. So, with respect to exams, and since exams are everything for us, the holy grail, so to speak, I feel maybe it's going to be, if anything, it's not going to be from a learning perspective, more from a I'm just going to study and do my exams perspective. Does that make sense? Like, it's not going to whatever out of the box thinking teachers might have had to teach their students something. A lot of the times there is a chance that they'll just be like, you know what, I'm just fed up with whatever's happening. Let me just like go straight to the point, teach for the exams and get out of it. And kids will also be very receptive to that because they'll be like, hey, like our parents have brought us up like such and we have to do XYZ. So it may take a shift like that also, which may not be a huge movement with respect to how they view education, how they view learning as a whole. Yeah.
So we have Pallavi saying that it will change and Prini saying it will not.
Let's see. Anyways, we can, I think both ways.
Okay. We'll listen to, we'll see where the voting goes.
So I think I've already said this before, but I'll just repeat it, that schools are just not interested in changing. So I'm actually, it's very heartening to know from Pallavi that, schools in Assam are doing such things because it's great. Again, from the industry point of view, smart classes have been there in India since the early 2000s. And as I was talking to somebody else the other day about smart classes, and I worked with the second largest content maker in India in 2012, Next Education, based out of Hyderabad. So those guys ultimately sold, TVs. So they said when we go and approach a school, we tell the principal, the trustee, the board member, whoever is the decision maker, because it's very difficult to know who's the decision maker in a school. So you go there and you tell them this is a smart class, big TV projector, and all these things. And after some time, they just look at you blankly as to why would I be even interested in this? The status quo is so beautiful for me. Parents come, give me money, and I teach kids, and it's just going. So we don't need it. So at the end of the day, what they would pitch is, their sales pitch would always be about, sir, aur kuch nahi to just buy this TV. It looks nice in your school. So that's what the thing was. I remember in 2016, 2015, I went to a good school in Delhi. Like, this is a good school in Delhi, which has invested in smart classes. So almost all the classrooms, at least of high school students, they have this big projector and, a computer terminal, everything integrated in the Blackboard itself. So that's a smart class system, but they never use it. So they were very, they said, okay, do you have a pen drive of the presentation that you want to make? And I said, actually, I don't prefer to give out the pen drive to you guys. A, it's my intellectual property. B, your systems are full of viruses. So I said, let me put my own computer and start it from there. They said, okay, because we are glad that you said that, because our computer is not working. So your pen drive might not have worked anyhow. Then I tried to connect it to the projector. There was no cable. The cable, the video cable was not there, not HDMI, and neither the other one. And what I had to do was, so there is this old style slide projector that we used to have. You used to make things on a talc sheet and put it in the slide. There will be a bulb. It will throw out the slide. It will capture in a mirror and then project it, right? So that projector was also included in the smart class system. So what I did was, I used my computer, I used my laptop, and I flipped it. So the screen was on the table and the keyboard was 90 degrees up. Then the projector was looking at the screen. It took the photo of my laptop screen and then it projected it. And this is in 2015 in the capital of the country. And they already had the resources, not the motivation. So according to me, I don't think things are going to change. They're just waiting it out. The pandemic hai, hoga, there will be, fatalities and whatever. But after some time, social distancing will not be there. I don't think there will be much change. We will go back to normal. You have seen, we've all seen what happened in Delhi once the alcohol shops were opened. So we didn't really care about anything else because, well, that's my bit.
I also think things will not change, especially in schools as of now. Some of the schools, good elite private schools, may be able to adapt and shift to, a blended learning of online and offline. But in public school, low income schools, I think it's not possible for them as of now. It requires a lot of infrastructure, money, investment on. Secondly, the teachers are not really equipped right now, and you get a lot of repulsion from the system, the people who are there to adapt to these technologies. For example, give you a simple example. In Delhi government school, tabs were distributed to teacher to make sure they're, doing their daily attendance on the tab and, uploading the marks and other database. And teachers are not really happy doing that. They find with doing it on paper, submitting it them. They see it as an additional task and not something which can lead to efficiency and save time for them. So they also saw a lot of repulsion initially, and now also teachers are not really happy working on tabs because they're so used to that. So it will take time, might be in future, but as of now, immediately, I am not seeing a lot of change happening, especially in the low-income public schools that we have in the country. And low-income private school, and even middle-income private school also. I'm not seeing a shift happening really soon.
So, I would just like to add one more point over there. Very rightly said, Jasleen, because we don't have, that central guideline. So just taking an example from the pandemic again, governments in Punjab, they asked the schools to reduce the fees. All right. Delhi government also asked the schools to reduce the fees and not take more than 70% of the fees. What the schools in Delhi did was they first hiked the fees by 40%. So they increased the fees and then they took 70% of that. So they still recovered 98% of the fees. So, and this is happening openly after the government gives directions. So till the time something seriously is thought out and then the implementation is solid, this will not pan out for the rest of the country.
Yeah, things will happen on individual level. Like few families will be able to adapt. They will get their kids enrolled to, Baiju or, for example, other app. But it is not happening in schools at systemic level. Teachers are using different content and sharing at personal level, but it is not happening systematically. That's where I agree with Saurabh. It requires systemic change. Right now, we're dependent on parents and teachers to make sure that learning is happening.
What could be the reason why this value addition is not seen at a micro level also with respect to schools? Say, Saurabh, you had given the example of a school and like, hey, this TV has XYZ. But at the same time, they were just like, hey, I'm going to just do my thing and you can do your thing because you're an organization doing something totally different and we are completely isolated silos. Why aren't they looking at it? Is there a reason? I'm sure there are multiple, but is there a reason that you could quote as to why this is not happening in the first place? Why are they not looking at it from this perspective? Why are they not seeing the value addition as a whole? Is it because of their philosophy with respect to education, saying that this is what they're doing and this is what their value system is? This is the vision of the school. They want only exam ke liye whatever. Or is there something else?
So that's a very good question, Praneeth. And if I go into it, I'll probably cross some controversial lines over here. But I don't care. So
go for it.
The thing is, and that's a fact actually. Government schools are not encouraged by society as in general. All right. Probably apart from NCT Delhi, the state of government schools in the rest of the country is just miserable. And now finally some state governments have said, okay, we'll follow the Delhi model, but to what extent, nobody knows. Kendriya Vidyalaya, Sarvodaya Vidyalaya definitely is at a much better state because it's controlled by the central government, right? So definitely much better, but a lot of improvement needed. So there are some KVs in the country, especially towards the southern part of the country. In South India, the KVs qualities are really, really good. In fact, long ago, 2009, I went to a remote area in Kerala in the Wayanad district. and I went there to take a career session for Sarvodaya Vidyalaya students of class 10th. It was amazing. So the quality was very high. But in North India, East India, you will not find the same quality. So the standardization of policy implementation is not there as far as KVs or centrally controlled schools are there. When we come to the private schools, and there are these big organizations which call themselves non-profit societies, whether you take it DPS or DAV schools or Bal Bharti schools and so many other places. These organizations are unfortunately and sadly led by completely business-minded people who, at the end of the day, focus on the bottom line. Ki boss, this much money has to come in, and the money basically comes from the fees, right? There is this constant tussle between the students and between the parents and the teachers nowadays because of behavioral issues. So the parents keep blaming and this is an urban India phenomenon where parents are working in the morning and then they're coming back and then they see the kids are completely behaving in a very bad way. So they blame the teachers. They're saying we're paying lakhs of rupees to you. You're not doing anything. And the teachers say it's because of a household which is not a very good nurturing environment. So the private schools completely wash their hands off of any responsibility or accountability when it comes to that. All right. Now, summarizing all this, the entire education system in India, which is a structured education system at the school level, it's very, it's not at all standardized. It's in bits and pieces everywhere. There are a lot of loopholes. And then who has to plug those loopholes? When we talk about different economic strata of the country, there are organizations like Teach for India and a lot of NGOs which are plugging the gap at the bottommost level. Then for expensive or middle income or even higher income groups, there are people like me and Pallavi, and we are the professionals they seek out because the school is just not helping enough, right? So when you talked about the intrinsic motivation is definitely there, but it's not for the right reasons. The intrinsic motivation is not about giving out a quality product at the end of the day. The quality product for them will be 94% marks. That's good enough, but it will not really be achievements in sports. It will not really be achievements in extracurricular activities. It will not really be achieving or understanding whether the student which has come out of the school is actually a wholesome citizen, responsible, wholesome citizen. Passed in a lot of entrance examinations in India after 12th. Now, in one of the trivia that they talked about, I think it was Maharana Pratap's birthday or something. So they mentioned on this day in that year, it was Maharana Pratap's birthday. All right. You know what happened? A 12th standard student, a 17, 18-year-old kid came forward and said, you said that Maharana Pratap did not have one eye. And that's a fact, okay? Even Maharaja Ranjit Singh in Punjab did not have an eye. He had a stone eye. That's a fact. And the student came up and said, without caring about whether the GK is useful for him or not, he basically was talking about, and do you think that's the right way to represent the heritage of Hindus? So the schools are not even able to, tell students about what is fact and what you need to understand. And they're completely being washed away by something else. So the intrinsic motivation, if it is not from schools, to teach students or make learning happen, the students will not learn. And when the students will not learn from the school where they're supposed to learn from, they will learn from outside, from WhatsApp University, from the internet, and they will not really check the sources because they're not mature enough. So whatever goes inside their heads right now is completely their own making. So the schools are not responsible there. Nobody's taking responsibility of that. So I heard, Priyank, thank you for introducing me to Silver Lining for Education. Because I heard episode 2 over there, where Sugata Mitra from Calcutta is talking about, an educationist from India. He's talking about SOUL, self-organized learning environment, right? So I think that there is a huge gap right now where people who understand technology and education, like Praneeth, can tell parents and students how to create a soul for themselves, because schools are not doing enough. So they need to learn the right things from the internet, not the wrong things. And that's what I do in my cyberbullying sessions also. So that's my bit.
So I just have one question to ask. This just struck me when Saurav was speaking. see, we have talked about a lot of our problems, so we should also, in the end, talk about. Let's say, tomorrow we put it on YouTube, and some administrator or even Ramesh Pokhriyal is seeing us, you know, as an administrator or as an anybody who as an educator, if there are solutions which we could give, are there ideas with you setting out of the box with respect to catering to children if the pandemic goes on for long? Because the way I see it, it is going to go for very, very long. It is not going to. There's no near future where we are saying that it is not. It is saying bye bye to us. In that case, how do we make learning to reach students? How do we do that? Keeping in mind that there are students who have good access to technology and there are who have none. So with that respect, what are the different ways we could reach different students?
So I would definitely like to talk about this over here because I'm actually working on a project right now, which is based on community learning. So as I talked about SOL, self-organized learning environments. So the student has to do everything by going online. Then let's say, the student understands, okay, I need to create my own learning environment now. So he has to visit a lot of resources and see which things work for him, which things do not work for her. So what we are trying to do is, me and a bunch of my techie friends, we are trying to create an ecosystem where the student can come, pick and choose the things that he wants in his learning environment. All right. It might be education related. It might be YouTube videos. It might be, personalized counseling or mentoring, or it might be career consultancy. So he can pick and choose which things he or she wants and then create an SOLE for herself or himself. So that is definitely on the individual level, but at the same time, that ecosystem will also offer that particular student learning methodologies from other learners inside the community. So that's what I call as community learning, and that is what we are working on right now. So be able to do that. So definitely, children or students who have access to technology and have the right resources, they will benefit. I have no answers about the rest of India. Who does?
No, it is more or less about those, because if we are able to provide some resources to some children who are well off in a sense, then we are also, in a way, making it more inequitable. The equity gap is getting increased. So on one hand, okay, it is fine, it is good to provide resources, but what about the equity levels? What about the children who are not able to access it? Are we, so, if we are not able to do anything with them, those who don't have internet, is it right to give the resource? I don't know.
No, I want to hear the question again because I could not hear clearly. Either there is a problem with his network or my network.
Can someone repeat it for her? Because I don't know if she'll be able to.
So Pallavi, what Priyank was saying was, so if we create solutions only for students who have access to technology or enough resources to access them, aren't we creating, are we just contributing to more inequity or inequality when it comes to access to education?
Yeah, of course. Because like right now, so I'm a part of a project, 2 projects where we are trying to talk to 3 girls in a week. So these girls are from different parts of UP and Bihar. So they don't have access to technology. So there are similarly other girls from Maharashtra and the Western India belt. So they are having access to technology. So I was just having a talk with a girl yesterday night. She wanted to do BSc nursing. So I was trying to explain to her, and it felt so sad because she was telling me whatever information I was giving, that is the information that she was writing, because she comes from interior Unnao, and most of the times there is no electricity, leave about internet. So I think then, yeah, definitely we have to reach to both the categories of people. We can't just plan something for people, those who have access to technology. We should also think something alternative for people, those who don't have access to technology.
What is that alternative?
So what we did was that we used to go to particularly some villages. We used to go from Youth Ki Awaaz, we used to go to those villages, find out people, those who are interested, and we used to volunteer, collect them, explain to them, give them, because this was something voluntary that we did. So I have done it myself. I think there will be a lot of people those will be able to do it, but it also depends because it's a choice. Not everybody would want to go to those paths, because if you talk about without technology, I think that is the only medium to reach them, by going there physically. Otherwise, I don't think, because physically I have myself gone, so that's what I can say.
Yeah, like Pallavi mentioned, like what Pallavi mentioned, almost 70% of the people are in rural areas, and I don't know how it will look like because we do not have the infrastructure in the place. We do not have schools in place, and how can we even talk about digital solution, digital education currently? Like I know digital technology is the only way how we can bridge gap between urban and rural by making it accessible in longer run. But currently, even in short term, like next 2 years, 5 years, I'm really not sure how things will look like because we need to have the infrastructure in place. We need to have budgets increased in education. We need to have, people talking about it, systemic change and policy level intervention. Um, like I know that private schools will be able to cope up with that. They will be able to pull it all together. But what about 70-80% of the population where we do not even have the infrastructure in place? So, like, even I am curious how the next few years will look like post pandemic. And like, I'm also again in learning and learning phase of what can be the possible solutions to make sure we are reaching all children.
I think then probably we will keep it for the next this thing. We'll